Like, I think back to it, and that first week of us being home and being a family of 4, like, I remember just, like, looking at him and crying constantly because we were like, he's a miracle. And, like, regardless of what people said about him, regardless of what doctors spoke over him, he was here and he was alive and he was healthy.
Never really been into church, kind of was when we were kids and stuff like that. But I started going to church because she was going to church, and I, of course, liked her. We were in junior high, and eventually getting back further into church and, constantly going to groups and stuff like that with Brianna and Richie. That's when y'all had first introduced Alpha to us. And with Alpha, I had a significant moment. I have always been the friend. They come to me with all their problems, and that's why I always felt like my bucket of water, where, you could constantly keep getting your bucket poured into, but, eventually it's just going to start overflowing. There's nothing left for you to pour into. Well, that's what I felt like. And everybody was up at the front praying, and they said, if you feel like you want to pray or anything like that, come up here. I said, God, really, I want to fully believe what you're telling me. And Richie said to me, so it's going to sound very weird, but for some reason, God is telling me something about a bucket. Lost? From that moment forward, that's when I decided, I'm trusting everything into God, everything into Him.
At 12 weeks, we found out that he was going to have Down syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
And at the first doctor's visit I went to, the doctor pretty much told me that my pregnancy would be a waste of time and that there was no point in continuing it out and that his life was not going to be meaningful. And I remember leaving that appointment and crying all the way down the elevator and into the parking lot, and just, that was probably the first time I actually hit my knees and prayed. And I just felt like God was so much bigger than a medical diagnosis, and He wouldn't create a life that wasn't going to be meaningful. It was just a crazy pregnancy. 2 weeks before he was born, we had a small house fire. So we ended up going and getting a hotel for 2 weeks, and I actually went into labor in the hotel. Fast forward to his 7-week checkup, and he was not maintaining oxygen. Admitted to the PICU, and they couldn't figure out how to get his oxygen levels up. So then he was life flighted to Cook's in Fort Worth. He had surgery, and he's, on the recovery now. All that to say, just the overwhelming love that we have felt from everybody at church. Pastor Pam sent me a message one day when we were in the hospital, and she just prayed over us. And even though we were so far apart from everybody, we were still so moved. I feel like this past year has been the hardest year of my life, but I've never been closer to Jesus. And it makes me so emotional thinking if we never set foot in Amarillo Fellowship, because we really did find a family through Amarillo Fellowship. Even small groups that we're not a part of right now reached out to us. They were helping us. They were praying over us. And I truly, as a mom in that situation, you feel so helpless. And everybody was like, how can we help? How can we help? And all I could tell them was to pray. And the power of prayer is so real because I could feel it. He could feel it. And it worked. I'm speechless when I think about the situation.